what's up everybody? This is Gloria and I am live right here on Facebook, and I'm in the interview that I have been telling you guys all about. I'm here with the Kelly Cardenas and he is amazing, you guys. I sat here and we just were, running around trying to get set up and everything like that, but I also seen some really cool things that you brought out, some cool skateboard that has your, your hairstyle on there, and some books that you had there.
Well, this one was one of my favorites because whenever I go, being in the professional beauty industry, I show up to a hair show with this. People are always asking, like, why do you have a skateboard? And, why not?
Yeah.
And I just had a young guy today. His name was Luca. I've been cutting his hair since he was 4 years old. And he actually is a skater now, so he's 12, and I got to give him a skateboard, and now he's out there, and he has a connection point to our brand, because I always wanted our brand to transcend the hair industry and just be about people. So.
Yeah, that was the key thing that you kept saying too when I was following you around on your Instagram and stuff. You were really talking about letting go of all that salesy stuff and really just honing in on the people. And you take care of the people, it's going to come back to you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys, hi, I can see you guys there. Thanks for viewing in. Lots of friends viewing in right now. You guys, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Like, I want to kind of pull out of you some of that goodness that you have that I seen on Instagram. Actually, the first time I seen you, I was following around Tim's story. So Tim's story and we both have mutual friends, but we don't know each other.
Really?
So Tim's story used to preach around in our fellowships and praise chapels and stuff like that. And so I've known him and seen him preach like in person and stuff. And then I was following his Instagram, and then I seen you come in, and then they were saying, oh, there's this guy, and he's in Carlsbad. And so, like I do, I just randomly do. I say, hey, can I interview you? And see if they respond.
Yeah.
But I am I get so excited when people like you or other people, and they respond. And so you responded.
Of course.
You're like, yeah, let's do it. And so that really, that drives me. That gets me really excited. I'm like, yes, this is what it's all about. So, so that's kind of like how I first kind of discovered who you were. And then I started following around your content and stuff, and it was super cool stuff.
Thank you.
So, but we all have this kind of crazy start to how we get into the things that we do. So kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, the professional beauty industry for me, it was never that I was super excited about doing hair or, cutting the best haircut or doing the best color. It was simply, it was out of necessity, and I think that the best inspiration comes most of the time from desperation. And, if you're out there, that's the first thing I want you to write down, because a lot of you guys, we're going to be in desperate times, but that's where the inspiration can happen. And for us, we just couldn't afford a haircut. So my mom would cut it. And then my dad wanted to save even more money, so he went and bought dog clippers to shave the dog, because he was mad that we were sending it to the groomer. And we tried to shave the dog one time. Didn't chain it up. It ran away. Ran out of the garage. And then my brother and I turned the clippers on each other. And the one that did that to me, he cut my hair. He became the lawyer. The one that was laughing while I was getting my hair cut became the doctor, and I ended up becoming the hairdresser.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool. Really cool. So you shared a little bit about your growing up. It's kind of like how you started and things like that. You know what? I can't stop looking at this bracelet. What is it?
Well, every single thing that I have is a story. I always want to have little trinkets on me that will cause people to do exactly what you did.
That's really
so
good.
Not only in the industry that I'm in, but just in general. So if I'm walking through an airport, if I'm wearing something that's a little bit off or a little bit different, people ask me about that item, and it's a conduit to help me to be able to connect with people. So this one came from my wife. Everything cool that I have is from my wife. She's amazing, and we used to watch Swamp People together. And the show on believe it was on A&E or whatever it was, and it was about guys hunting gators. And we got so into it, and it was the silliest show ever, and everything was gator. Even down to I got a gator couch in the first salon that we had, and it was a red gator couch, and the whole part of it was being involved or getting so engulfed in something, even if it was silly, caused people to want to know about the story. And once you got someone to listen to your story, then you could connect with their soul.
That is really good. I love that. Yes, I used to do that. I hadn't done it in a while since I was coming back from London and scrumming around trying to get back settled in to America and all that. But I love that. Super good. So Kelly, you have 2 kids?
I have 2 children.
I was looking at that. You have 2 kids, and you have a dog, Skylar.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell us a little bit
Well, I mean, obviously, the 2 kids, you know how they came about. My wife's super hot. My wife is super hot, and that's awesome.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
But with the dog, my daughter was into dogs, right, from the time that she could speak.
Yeah.
But I was that dad that said, no way, no way, no way, no way, because it's going to tear up the house and do all that stuff.
Yep.
And she stayed on me for 7 years. And 7 years she, can I have a dog, can I have a dog, can I have a dog, until I finally broke, and then I got the dog. And it did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It destroyed our whole house, killed our floors, peed on everything, went in neighbors' houses, almost killed my relationships with people. But the one thing that it did is it got me out every morning to walk the dog, because I walked it around the neighborhood. And it was a twofold thing. One, I had never seen my neighborhood before. I had never seen it, and I see it every single morning, so I get to appreciate it. I get to hear the birds sing, and that's what my dad said, that his mom said to him when he was growing up. She said, no matter what's going on in your day, if you go outside and you listen, the birds will always be singing, meaning that there's always some great thing that's going to happen on that day. And the third thing is that I actually get to talk to my dad every single day. And so I talk to him on the dog walk, and so he tells me every day that he thanks God for that dog. And I think there's so many blessings in our life that God is trying to give us, but we resist them because they're not exactly what we think that they should be.
Right.
But the blessing of my dad came through a thing that I didn't want, which was my dog. And so I would say, don't go out there and get a dog, because that's the worst thing you could do. But what I would say is, if God keeps impressing something on you, stop resisting it and allow him to be able to bless you. So.
Yeah, that was really good. I did hear that one on Instagram. It was super good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I liked that. That is, I can kind of resonate with that, because I went to London, and it wasn't until I got the dog that things really started happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it got me outside, like you said.
Yeah.
I had to get out there, I had to meet people, other people with their dogs, and then there was this group of us ladies that would chat and gossip and walk our dog. It was so much fun.
Well, I had to tell, but I do have to do the disclaimer, because there's so many young people out there that start in their business that say, hey, I want to go get a dog. And I'm a proponent of saying no to that person. The reason why is because if you take on something, like early on in your career, you're going to have less and less free time, and you're going to have more and more responsibility. So the less responsibility that you can have early on in your career will give you the opportunity to, like, for me, I was able to say yes to so many things because I didn't have anything outside of myself to take care of. And the more and more things that you put around you that lock you into a place are going to stop you a lot of times from the opportunities that can come. So when I was 21 years old in this business, and they said, hey, we're going to New York this week, I could go to New York because I didn't have to worry about a dog, I didn't have to worry about a child, I didn't have to worry about a wife. All I did was had to go that way. So I'm not saying to be alone for the rest of your life, but at certain points go get a dog, but please, early on in your career, I would suggest staying away from them, and then later on you can get them when your daughter guilts you into it.
Right, there you go. So you really, your body language changed and everything when you start talking about the dog and your dad and all of that. There's really a good connection with that right there.
Absolutely.
In business, and this is your passion, this is what you do, and it's kind of like we said, how there's always some kind of start to it, and the reason why you do it. But I'm sure that there's some struggles. Share with us, when you face those struggles, how did you keep going? What did you do? What did you tell yourself?
Well, I think that it goes all the way back to, I mean, we were pretty much, there always seemed to be struggle in our life at some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad was in the military, and he was 14 years in, and one day came home and said, God told me to get out of the military. And so literally one day, like, he was in the military, and then bang, he's out.
Wow.
And we've got a moving truck at our house packing up, and all my friends are asking, oh, where are you going? Where are you moving? Because that's normal in the military family, that you see a moving truck, you ask your friend, where are you moving to?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't know where we were moving because we didn't have any plans. And my dad didn't have any plans. So he's just packing up the moving truck, and my friends keep asking me, like, where are you moving to? And I said, I don't know. And then they said, oh, quit joking around. Where are you moving to? I said, I don't know. And then I remember the third time that I'm saying, like, where are you going? And I was so embarrassed that I said, I don't know, and just got mad. But so we had kind of grown up in that type of environment. The flip side of it, though, the positive side, was from the time I was in 4th grade to the time I was in 6th grade, we did a thing called sleep teaching. So my dad was a part of the first, like, pyramid scheme, or MLM now was what they call it. And he took these motivational tapes, and he broke the headphones and put them through our wall. So one headphone in my brother's pillow, one headphone in mine, auto-reverse Walkman, that most of you don't realize what that is.
Right.
But the Walkman, and it had motivational tapes, and we'd listen to them for 8 to 10 hours a night, which was sleep teaching, going into your subconscious. So from 4th grade to 6th grade, I had 8 to 10 hours of positive reinforcement that was happening. I believe that that's a part of it. The other part of it is that every day from the time I can remember, I woke up to my mom telling me that she loved me more than anything in the world, that I was the greatest, and that I could accomplish anything that I put my mind to, and I could, anything that I was purposed to do. So I was told that every single day. Not one day went by that they didn't tell me that. So I have 8 to 10 hours of positive reinforcement, motivational tapes. I have that happening, but I also have all this chaos around me of, us getting a moving van and not having anything. So by the time I had got to challenges in business, so the reason why my whole company started is because I got fired from my job. I was 29 years old, almost 30, so 29 years old, and I get a call one day, and at the time I'm making a little over $250,000 a year. I'm working 4 days a week. I'm 29 years old. I went to hair school, barely graduated from high school, so I shouldn't be doing this. And they called me and told me my job is done. Well, the reason why I reacted the way that I did, and the way that I was able to get through it, is, and God kind of took me through this, where when David went to fight, you hear about David and Goliath.
Yes.
You always hear this, and you always hear, like, oh, who's your giant, or what's your Goliath in your life?
Right.
But the part that they don't talk about is that David fought some bears, some lions,
Exactly.
and then he fought the giant.
Yeah.
So by the time he got to the giant, he said, I already fought bears, I already fought lions, so this guy, no big problem. So for me, by the time I got to the point where I got fired from my job at 29, and I lost $250,000 like that, I had already fought bears, I had already fought lions. So by the time I got to this giant, I said, this is just nothing more than another step. So it wasn't, I think like what God does is He builds us faith to faith, glory to glory. He doesn't, and this is where people get off, is they saw me like, oh wow, you went and started your company, I'm going to do the same thing, I'm going to quit my job and do it. I said, no. I fought bears, killed them, fought lions, killed them, then got to the giant, and then we slayed the giant. But had I not done the bears, the lions, and some people in their life right now haven't even fought a cub. So my advice to people, before you go jump off in the deep end because you hear somebody's inspirational story, I would go and maybe you need to fight some alley cats. Maybe you need to fight some puppies. And then work your way up, because He'll build your faith to faith and glory to glory. He won't just take you from one place and just put you in another. He'll always build you up. So.
Yeah, that's, I think, the best thing I've heard in every single podcast I've ever done. It's probably the best.
Thank you.
That's the best piece of advice. Yes, it's really good. You guys seriously listen to this, because I see people and they, their popularity brings them all the way to the top, and they either fizzle down little by little or they just drop. As soon as the going gets tough and they can't handle the pressure and the anxiety and all that hits in, like Kelly said, it is from glory to glory. And not only that, we got the Holy Spirit.
Well, and then by the time, the first 5 years of opening the company, I had 5 major robberies in the first 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember where God really, really grabbed a hold of me as I was on the way home. Got robbed at 2 o'clock in the morning, so we smashed the window and went into our place. Well, when I got there, they had smashed the window. They had rustled up all our stuff and then only took the coffee maker. And I was thinking, if you bust my window, at least take the TV, take all the products, take the money. But I get there, I drive across town, 2 o'clock in the morning. By the time I'm done, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning. We're dealing with the cops, everything like that, and I'm speeding home. Well, I look like I do. Plus, I like cars, and I was driving a car that most guys that look like me shouldn't be driving. Plus, I was in, so I'm driving 85, 90 miles an hour to get home, and I get pulled over. So I think the cop is going to be okay because I'm going to tell him that I just got robbed and I'm on the way home. Well, I don't realize that I live in Vegas. So 4 o'clock in the morning, looking like I do in that kind of car, looks like I'm dealing something that I shouldn't be dealing.
What kind of car is it?
It was a 7 Series Beamer. So, you know, again, it looked a little conspicuous, whatever it is, and he asked me about it. I tell him the story, I think he's going to let me off, and he's like, oh, good story, and writes me the ticket. Well, I was so mad, and God said to me at that point so clearly, the only reason why you got robbed tonight is because you have a business which gives you the opportunity to get robbed. So he was all about my perspective, because what he was telling me is, if you didn't have a business, you couldn't get robbed. So do you not want to get robbed anymore? I'll take away your business. And I said, no, I'll keep my business and continue to get robbed. I'm good. So.
That's good perspective. Man, where do you get all this? How old are you? You know, like I'm like so old. You're saying all this stuff. You're still so young.
Thank you.
That's really good stuff.
Can you tell all my staff that I'm young? Because they get all my dad jokes is what it is. So.
No, that's really good stuff. Like, you know, that's really, really good stuff. I kind of was similar, but I didn't have like a dad that was, you know, putting in, you know, through the wall, you know, tapes or anything like that. I had teachers that came into my life that, you know, I didn't know that it was all this you know, inspirational, motivational stuff, or self-development stuff that they were teaching us until way later on, you know, when I took a Dale Carnegie course, and then things started clicking in, and I was like, that's what my teacher said way back when, you know, when I was like 16. And, but yeah, it's, really good bits of wisdom and good stuff. So, anything else? What do you want to share, dude?
Well, I think one of the biggest things was, you know, early on. So if you do the math on that, the 8 to 10 hours. So if you do 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, right?
Yes.
So it's 56 hours.
Yeah.
So I round it to 60. 60 times 50 weeks in a year is 3,000, and 3,000 times 2 is 6,000. So I had 6,000 hours of motivational tapes and business tapes before I was in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And what was great is one of the principles of these was a guy named Ken Blanchard. And so Ken Blanchard is something my dad raised me on. Well, little did I know how God works. Ken Blanchard was going to be speaking at the Chamber of Commerce about last year. It was about a little over a year ago. And so on the way out of the house, my wife and I were going. I was so excited because I had never got to see Ken Blanchard, but I had heard of him. Because my dad had spoken about him, and I had listened to him about him when I was growing up, subconsciously. And so I grabbed one of my books, and I wrote to Ken, "It's great to meet you," and all this stuff. And my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm autographing a book to Ken Blanchard." She's like, "You don't know him?" And I said, "Yet." So he spoke, and then I waited for the you know, things to kind of be a little bit of a not a mess, but when someone gave an award and people were talking in the audience, and then I bolted to a table. And I dropped down. I knew I only had a couple seconds, so I said, "Mr. Blanchard, I want to thank you so much. I was raised on your principles. We use them in our business, and our business is very successful. Thank you." And he said, "What is your business?" I said, "Thank you so much for asking. Here's my book." And I handed him my book, and I left. Right? 10, 15 minutes later, I have a woman walk over to my table. She said, "Are you Kelly Cardenas?" And I said, "Well, yes." But and she said, "You just gave a book to to Ken Blanchard," and I thought that she was kind of offended by it. Well, I said, "Yeah, that was me." And she said, "Well, he looked at it and he likes the look of it. We've got a conference here in Carlsbad called the Servant Leadership Conference, Servant Leadership Institute Conference, and we've got room for one more speaker. Would you be interested in that. And I acted like I was calm, and I was jumping inside,
Yeah.
and I said yes. So when I said yes to this, I had no idea what was going to open up, the world was going to open up, because Ken Blanchard's really good friend, who owns the Servant Leadership Institute, is Art Barter. So Art Barter was there sitting next to Ken. I didn't know who this was. So they had me come to the Servant Leadership Institute conference,
Yeah.
and I got to be on the same speaking bill as Ken Blanchard. And Blanchard is BL, Cardenas is CA. So on the bill, they did it in alphabetical order, so it was Ken Blanchard and then Kelly Cardenas. Now, I wasn't speaking right after him, but on the bill, it looked like that. And above that was Barter. So Art Barter was the founder of Servant Leadership Institute. And so we have since become friends. Robin Swift was the lady that came over and asked me would I be willing to speak, is now a guest of mine, so I do her hair. I just did her hair today. And we're really looking at taking servant leadership, because you know, some of you guys are privy to servant leadership, but what it is it's basically turning the organizational chart upside down. So it's taking your heart and putting it into business, and saying, if I'm the CEO, I'm not on top of the pyramid anymore, I'm on the bottom, and I get to serve everybody. Because when the organizational chart is like this, the CEO, say if you drink you know, the CEO drank, and then it ran down, right? So you can imagine if it ran down, the way that I said it, if you had a 3-story building, and a guy stood on top of the 3-story building, the guy stood on the 3rd story, then 2nd story, then 1st story. The guy on the top story took a drink of water, and then spit it out into the mouth of the person on the 3rd floor, and then that guy spit it out onto the 2nd floor, and so on and so forth. By the time it got down to the bottom, you probably wouldn't want any of that water going into your mouth. And that's the way that traditional power structure leadership is. But when we turn it upside down, all the water flows into the whole organization, and it's all fresh. And the last person to drink is the CEO. And that's what I was taught from my parents, my mom and my dad, was that they would always be the last ones to eat, and they would always take care of the family. And I think that if, you know, 15 years from now, the power structure will be gone, and everybody, the norm will be servant leadership. So those that aren't doing servant leadership right now will be left behind if they don't grab a hold. It's very progressive now to think about it, and to have a CEO ask how he can serve the whole company. But what's going to happen in 15 years is going to be the norm, and Art Barter is the one that started it. So,
Wow, that's incredible. That is, I've vaguely read a little bit about that. I think it was in England. I think there was coming about, people were talking about that.
I mean, you should connect with him. You should interview Art. Art is an absolute genius. He's the
Totally.
front runner in servant leadership. This guy is an absolute. I mean, what he does for organizations. But a lot of times people are just looking at the bottom line. But what we find is, my dad always told me that if you build the people, then the people will build the business. But most people think of it the other way. I need to build the business, then I build the people. No. You build the people, and then you build the business. And that's exactly what Art's about with Servant Leadership Institute.
It's kind of biblical too, huh?
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, totally. Man, I'm just like soaking this all up, you guys. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate that. You know, all this, like everything that you're saying is just resonates with me. It's so good. I'm sure that the audience out there is really loving this right now.
Thank you. How do you get through struggles?
You know, it's kind of like similar to you. You know, I fought the bear. I grew up really tough. My dad was ex-convict.
Really?
Yes, and so my mind goes back to when he was reformed ex-convict.
Okay.
He didn't want us to get involved in gangs.
Okay.
We were more afraid of him than we were any gang member.
Okay.
Any gang member. There's a lot of people that, you know, I went to school with in elementary school in Southeast San Diego. But he was a biker, and so, you know, we lived in a house that he built on acres of land.
Wow.
And he, one day, doing construction, someone gave him a boat, so he said, we're going to go boating every weekend. Next thing you know, there was someone, we seen that they had motorcycles, like dirt bikes, motocross. And my dad said, you know, he was so excited about this. He was like, wow, look at that, you know, this guy. We went out to this place called 24th Street in National City, which was kind of like Pismo Beach. It was all sand dunes. We flattened it out, though now it's totally different now. But we went out there every weekend. He bought the dirt bikes. I became almost pro status motocross rider.
Really?
Yes, and it's because I had a connection with my dad. And when I first started riding, I said, Daddy, I want to do a wheelie, because he was so excited about some guy was doing a wheelie out there. And I wanted the attention on me. You know, I'm the oldest and stuff, and loved to make him proud. And so, Daddy, I want to do a wheelie, you know. So he's like, oh, you sure? So he goes, you know you're going to get hurt. Like, it's not if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt. You're going to fall down, you're going to get hurt. And so I said, okay. And so, I had already been tumbling and gymnastics and stuff. We went riding, and I did fall lots of times. Hurt myself a lot, lots of scars, gashing scars. But his thing that he always taught me, or all of us, is, if you can still breathe, then you still need to address it. So he said, you need to get back on the motorcycle until you're not scared of it anymore. Ride it a little bit, and then if you want to go back and try to do a wheelie, you can do a wheelie. So I perfected a wheelie.
Wow.
Just because I wanted to, I loved to see him. It was a connection between a daughter and a father.
Yeah.
I loved to see him, get his eyes brighten up like that.
How long was he away for? Like you were saying, how long was he in prison?
He was in for 10 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I just actually got to go to Colorado, to the Supermax complex there, and go and speak to the inmates, and then speak to the staff there too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Which I believe that there's a prison ministry that's opening up now, that we're working on, because we did it with three major things, because obviously going into a prison looking like I do, people were kind of set off a little bit, and so I told every one of them they have a 3-pronged way of success in any way, shape, anything in their life. If they apply it, then they already have practical application. And because I was in church one day, and there was the praise music was there, so I had my hands up, and God told me, put your hands behind your head. And I put my hands behind my head, and I was still praising, and then he said, put your hands behind your back, and I put my hands behind my back. Well, then he translated it afterwards, and he said, your hands up was surrendering to authority, and I'm your authority. So when you surrender to me, then you put your hands behind your head, which gives me permission to search your body for anything that's contrary to the belief system and love of me. And then he said, your hands behind your back is allowing me to take you into custody, and now your decisions aren't your own anymore. And so when I was talking to the inmates, what I was telling them is, they've all gone through that process in practical application. Hands up, hands behind your head, hands behind your back. And what I was telling them is, if you apply it to your purpose, your passion, and your dreams, if you surrender to your purpose, passion, and dreams, and then you allow your purpose, passion, and dreams to search your whole body for anything that's contradictory to it, and then you put your hands behind your back and let your purpose, passion, and dreams take you into custody and make all the decisions for you, just like this correctional facility is making all the decisions for you, telling you what to wear, when to wake up, where to go. If you do that with your purpose, passion, and dreams, you have the recipe for success in anything that you do. And I believe that this is going to be a prison ministry throughout the whole, not only the nation, but the world. So.
That's awesome. That is just, I don't know, how you come up with that, but that's super good. Really good. And I know that there's people out there that they're familiar with that, and that's going to resonate with them. Kelly, that's really good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. William, anything else you want to share?
I just want you, you're complimenting me a lot. I appreciate being here. But a thing that God gave to me very early on was, first he gave me Romans 9:17, which says that we put Pharaoh in this place, that when Pharaoh spoke, then people would like what he said, but it would be God's voice that they heard. And he told me he was going to put me in a place that when I spoke, then people had to listen, and when they listened, they'd hear his voice. And then he followed it up with a verse about King Herod Agrippa. And King Herod Agrippa walked out, he was a great king, and the people cheered on his name. And someone in the crowd said, this is not the voice of a man, this is the voice of God. And he didn't say anything about it, but in his heart he thought that it sounded good. And God struck him dead right then. And what God let me know is that He'll put me in a place that when I spoke, when people would listen, when they listened, they'd hear His voice. But if I ever got to the point where I thought that it was my voice that they were hearing, or that it even sounded good, that it was me that was doing it, then He would take every gift away from me. So tonight I don't want any gifts taken away. So if you think any of this stuff is good, it all comes from the Word anyway. So that's exactly where it's going. So put all glory to Him. So.
Yes, yeah, well, all glory to God, seriously, for reals. I was actually, that you said that, I was minding my own business, like I do, you guys, just minding my own business. And then somebody drops a note into my messenger, right? And, you know, I do this podcasting, you know, it's gaining momentum, you know, I love to meet with people and I love to hear their stories. Today, I was second guessing myself. I was saying, you know, you're not good at it. All this stuff was going through my head, right? You know, no one cares, or, you know, the church world, they don't understand it. And just dumb stuff, you know, just this self-talk that comes from really it's not the truth. And, you know, because I know that it's not about me. I know that it's about what God desires for me to do. Even if I'm an introvert, even if I get shy, even doesn't matter. It's what He desires for me to do. And if somebody drops a note in my messenger and says, I just want you to know that you don't fit the mold that everybody else is doing, and that you're in the right place, or something like that, they said. Yeah, and it was right at the right time, and you know who you are. But it was, you know, it was a man of God, a preacher, been a preacher for a long, long time. You know, he's known for doing that, known for speaking prophecies like that. But we don't know it. Like, we don't know each other except for, like, you know, I was a well-known missionary in and around the churches, and just randomly, you know, out of the
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a God moment. Yeah, it's not just, there's an encouraging word, and then there's, like, you know, a God word that is beyond encouraging. It's like it is meant by God to give to you. Yeah. So I'm just sharing that with you because, you know, I know that you're that kind of connecting kind of person, and I like to have the audience I like to be real with the audience, you know, what happens behind the scenes with people.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we feel these insecurities, and we feel, you know, like those moments where we're kind of second guessing, and then we realize that it's not about us anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the bigger picture.
Well, I thank you. I mean, what you're doing, I think, is incredible. I mean, obviously, these guys think that you're incredible too, and I just want you to, honestly, to really be encouraged. You know, encouraged in that, and to continue on, because there's so many people that you have no idea how you're touching their life, and they're going to come around in a different time. God says that, you know, one plants, one waters, but only He'll bring the increase. Yeah. And sometimes we're planting, sometimes we're watering, and most of the time we'll never see the increase. We'll never see it. Yeah. But the seeds that you're planting in people are gonna, I mean, it's, you know, the harvest is coming, and a lot of it you won't see, but that's all right, because you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, yeah, cool stuff, really cool stuff. So, anything else you want to share? I see some pretty cool shoes you got on as well.
Those are all stories too. With my shoes, I did. I visited them for five times before I actually bought them. So I think that's I mean, not a normal thing, but what you know, God has helped me with is, you know, making sure, like, you know, checking with Him. You know, checking with Him. Is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do? Yeah. You know, and that's been a huge thing for me. But again, it's story stuff. So yes, for me, I want to create a culture of storytelling, because I believe that's where you're going to touch people. And, you know, the cultural side, people talk about it, culture is a big word, but that's really what I believe my mission is to help people to have cultural efficiency. You know, and to be able to look at and say that, you know, 95% of challenges in relationships and business and in just in life in general is cultural.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to do with the processes or procedures that they do or the things that they do. It has to do with the cultural side, the things that they're believing,
Mm-hmm.
how they're believing, what their story is, and their reason why they're doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wear a pair of shoes like this because I want people to talk to me about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can let them know that I got them in Chicago. Oh wow, why were you in Chicago? I've got a salon in Chicago. Oh, you have a cousin in Chicago. They should go to the salon there. So,
Mm-hmm.
but all the reason why, so they sit down so we can have a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and when we have the conversation, that we end up right back talking about the reason why I started this, and this was simply to make people happy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and this was the gift that God gave me that was a conduit to be able to touch people. One of my mentors told me that there's not a piece of hair that's not connected to a head,
Mm-hmm.
that's not connected to a body, that's not connected to a soul. You touch the soul, you can do anything.
That's a good note to end on. That's so good. I don't even know what to say, you guys. It was just so good. I know that you guys got a lot out of this. It's going to be all over YouTube, and it's going to go on to the iHeart and iTunes platforms and things like that. But you know, give a good round of applause to
Thank
Kelly.
you. No, to you, and I appreciate the
Good.
opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're
I
awesome.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You're gonna peace out. Peace out.